What if death wasn't the end, but a doorway to something much darker? What if, in those final moments, you encountered a world that wasn't meant for the living? Meet Sarah Jennings, a woman who came face to face with death, and something far worse. Her terrifying encounter on the other side would change everything. Sarah Jennings was never one to believe in ghosts or the supernatural. At 34, she was a practical woman, a successful accountant, meticulous, logical. Her life was built on order, routines, and stability. She believed that everything could be explained by science, that death was simply the end. No afterlife, no mysterious forces, just darkness. That belief shattered one cold autumn night. It began as an ordinary evening. Sarah had just finished a late shift at the office and was driving home exhausted, her eyes struggling to stay open. The roads were slick with rain, the headlights from oncoming cars reflecting off the pavement like the ghostly glow of a forgotten world. Her car swerved slightly on the wet road, a sharp jolt making her body tense with sudden adrenaline. She barely had time to react. The next moment, a truck came speeding around the corner. The sound of metal crashing against metal, the sickening crunch of glass shattering, and then, nothing. A deep, suffocating silence. For a long moment, Sarah was suspended in darkness, unable to move or breathe. Then she felt it, the sudden weightlessness that overtook her, as if her body was no longer bound to the laws of gravity. Her mind buzzed with confusion, trying to process what had just happened. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. She couldn't even see. Everything was black, impenetrable, like a void swallowing her whole. But she wasn't afraid. There was no panic, just emptiness. And then, a voice, low, gravelly, coming from everywhere at once. Sarah froze. The voice didn't belong to any human she knew. It was ancient, unnatural, like a whisper carried on the wind deep from the bowels of the earth. Her heart pounded in her chest, though she couldn't understand why. Before she could react, she felt a pull, a strong magnetic force dragging her forward. The darkness shifted, twisting around her like smoke. She was moving, though she wasn't sure in what direction. It was as if the world was folding in on itself, bending reality until it no longer made sense. Suddenly, the world before her began to take shape. Slowly, a dim light appeared, a faint glimmer, too faint to fully see, but enough to outline the shadowy silhouettes of tall, twisted trees. The air was thick, suffocating, almost tangible. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The trees were wrong. Their trunks were gnarled and black like twisted limbs of some ancient beast, their branches clawing at the sky like the fingers of a corpse trying to break free from the ground. And the ground itself, no grass, no dirt, just cracked, barren earth, oozing something dark and sticky. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Her voice was gone. From the darkness emerged a figure, a tall, hunched shape, cloaked in tattered robes, its face hidden in shadow. It moved toward her with a slow, deliberate step. Its presence made her feel as though the very air around her was alive, pressing in on her, suffocating her. "You're not supposed to be here," the figure said, its voice rasping like 1,000 whispers. "But now that you are..." It reached toward her with a skeletal hand, fingers long and bony, covered in ancient scars. As it touched her arm, a cold shock surged through her like ice water seeping into her veins. The chill spread throughout her body, and for the first time, she felt fear. The figure spoke again, its voice low and mocking. "Death is not what you think. And now you've seen. You've seen what lies beyond. But it's not over yet, not for you." Before Sarah could react, the world shifted again. The trees melted away, and the landscape was replaced by a vast, empty space, black voids stretching infinitely in every direction. In the distance, she could see something moving, something large and monstrous, but it was shrouded in a fog, its form too grotesque to fully comprehend. And then, the worst part, she wasn't alone. The shadows in the distance were not empty. They were filled with figures, thousands of them, people. Their faces were contorted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes wide with terror. They floated aimlessly in the void, trapped, their bodies broken and twisted, their spirits lost to the darkness. One figure, a man, drifted closer. He had Sarah's face. Her heart stopped. She couldn't look away as the figure drew nearer, his eyes empty, his mouth twitching into a twisted, horrific grin. "You shouldn't have seen this," the figure rasped, his voice a horrifying echo of her own. "But now you will never forget." Sarah's chest tightened as she reached out to the figure, desperate to understand, but her hands passed through him as though he were made of smoke. A cold laugh echoed from all around her. The air began to hum with an oppressive, otherworldly energy that made her skin crawl. And then the floor beneath her feet cracked open, a deep, bottomless abyss yawning before her. She fell, faster and faster, the endless void swallowing her whole. But she didn't scream. She couldn't. She could only feel the pull of something dark, something that had waited for her all along. Suddenly, the void collapsed. The darkness had followed her. Sarah's mind raced as she looked over her shoulder, half expecting to see shadows creeping in the corners of her vision. Could it be real? Could the place she had glimpsed, the world beyond death, be more than just a nightmare? Or had she crossed over to something far worse, something that wasn't meant to be seen? One thing was certain. No matter how hard she tried to forget, the darkness was still there, lurking just beyond the veil.